of a debate among candidates for governor in Oklahoma. Democratic Lieutenant Governor Jack Mildren, Republican Frank Keating, and Independent Wes Watkins meet for a one-hour debate. Following that, a look at California Proposition 187, a ballot initiative concerning public services for illegal immigrants. Campaign Almanac live tonight at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on C-SPAN, the network of record for Campaign 94. Next, from Albuquerque, a debate between the candidates for governor in New Mexico. The candidates are Democratic incumbent Bruce King, Republican Gary Johnson, and Green Party candidate Roberto Mondragon. The hour-long debate was held last Friday and was sponsored by KNME Television.
Welcome to the second of KNME's 1994 Election Candidate Forums. I'm Chris Garcia. Tonight we are hosting the candidates for the office of the governor of the state of New Mexico. New Mexico's governor is elected for 4-year terms. Democrat incumbent Bruce King is seeking re-election to a second consecutive term. He has previously served 2 terms as governor, as well as having served in our state legislature. His Republican challenger is Gary Johnson. Mr. Johnson is an Albuquerque businessman in the construction business. He is making his first bid for public office. Roberto Mondragon was 2-time lieutenant governor of the state and has spent many years in the radio business. The latest public polls show this to be a very close race between the major party candidates, with the Green Party candidate also showing significant support. Before we begin our discussion, I'll explain the ground rules. Each candidate has 3 minutes to make an opening statement. Candidates will then have 2 minutes to respond to the panel's questions. Panelists may pose separate questions for candidates, or a single question may be posed to all 3 candidates. At the end of our forum, each candidate will present a 2-minute closing statement. Our panel of journalists include Mark Oswald, political reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican, Kate Nelson, political reporter for the Albuquerque Tribune, and Glenn May, reporter for the UNM Lobo. The candidates have drawn for position, and Governor King will now make his opening remarks. Governor?
Thank you, Chris. It's a real pleasure for me to be able to be here this evening and have the opportunity to visit with all of our many, many friends throughout the listening audience. When I came into this office in 1991, we were at the low end of the totem pole in many, many things. The things that should be up were down, and things should be down were up. And unemployment was up. Employment was down, and the tax base was down, and obviously should be up. So I moved very quickly to try to correct those things, to see what we could do. And certainly with the experience and the knowledge of the many people that I knew throughout New Mexico, I knew that we had to improve the opportunity to be gainfully employed if we were going to be successful in doing the things that I wanted to do for the people of New Mexico. So I mentioned during the campaign that we should divide the Economic Development Department and the Tourism Department, and I got the legislature to do that quite quickly, and I appointed Bill Garcia, Economic Development Director, and Mike Soletti as the Tourism Director. And it worked as I'd hoped it would. It gave the visibility to the Tourism Division, and Mike Soletti did an outstanding job. And I only point out those 2 because that's the caliber of the people that I appointed to the cabinet positions in a state government, and they immediately were successful in creating an atmosphere by working with workmen's compensation and attempting to have a friendly climate and to increase our tourist industry's ability to attract tourists, and immediately that way we had more money in the general fund. So it wasn't long until we began to get more money in the general fund. By the time I'd been there the second year, well, then we had enough funds that we could do the things that we need to do. And that, of course, was to get different people to come and invest their money, and we got people like Intel, the dairy industry, and many, many others. So during that time, we were able to create 85,000 new jobs from then until now. And certainly I wanted to be sure that every person in New Mexico felt that they were wanted and needed in order that we could show the prosperity and the full quality of life to everyone. And again, we were able to do this. And also, we were able to figure out a manner in which we could then begin to address the many, many needs that we had in New Mexico. And now we've got to where we had the largest increase in general fund monies of any state in the country. And we were able to go ahead and address the needs in children, youth, and family, education, and the things that we were able to increase by double the national average. So there are many, many things, and I know I'll get another opportunity, so I look forward to the questions. Real pleasure to be with you today, and thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Governor King. Second, with his opening statement, is Mr. Roberto Mondragon.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, New Mexico, for listening in and for participating in democracy. I've had a number of years of experience in government as well. I have been Lieutenant Governor for a total of 8 years. I have been in the New Mexico State Legislature representing an area in the Valley of Albuquerque for a total of 4 years. The first time I got involved in politics, I was 25 years old. That was back in 1966. We lived the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and now we're in the 90s, looking toward the future. And in looking toward the future, we touch on one of the very important issues that is a part of our platform. The Green Party is made up of a lot of people from throughout the state, and then a lot of other people who are not members of that party are supporting us as well, because we do provide the choice for you, the voters of New Mexico in 1994. The Green Party platform, of course, is one that I espouse to, and I feel that it is a platform that should be looked at by the other parties. And I do believe that it is being looked at by the Republican and the Democratic Party as well. It has a lot to do with looking towards the future and making sure that our children and our children's children are able to enjoy a lot of the things that we enjoy. That we look at as the part that has to do with the environment. Then we have another part of the platform that has to do with social justice and the programs that have to do with jobs, that have to do with health and the quality of life, that have to do with assuring that we have the kind of respect for the diversity that is included as part of the state of New Mexico. Then we have the other part, which has to do with democracy, participation by people in government, as they should, according to this country's constitution. With the experience that I have, which is a total of 12 years in effect working with the legislature, part of that as Lieutenant Governor, with the kind of platform that we provide, we can reach out to all the parties and to all the parts of the state of New Mexico to help us provide the leadership to move New Mexico and our people into the next century. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto Mondragon. Now, Gary Johnson, your opening statement.
Well, it's been about 20 years, but I had Chris Garcia as a teacher at the University of New Mexico. So Chris, I don't know if I'd be here if I didn't learn how to be in this political process. So thank you. It's good to see you again.
My pleasure.
Really, I'm really grateful to be in a position here to make a difference, a positive difference in people's lives. I always hoped my life would be about this, in a position to make a positive difference in people's lives. So I'm very grateful to be living what I hope my life would be. I, along with my wife, started a business here in Albuquerque 20 years ago as a one-person handyman operation, and over the last 20 years we've grown Big J Enterprises into becoming one of the largest construction businesses in New Mexico. It's really been due to a couple of factors. We always told the truth, we always kept our word, and so we were accountable for everything that we ever did. So what I'm looking to do is just bring a common sense business attitude to state government, something that I really think is lacking. And I pledge to tell the truth, I pledge to keep my word, and I pledge to be accountable to everybody in this state, to seeing this state move ahead. I think that we really have a significant difference in this campaign. On one hand, you've got a fellow here that's been involved in New Mexico politics for at least 35 years, and I'm the contrast. I would suggest that perhaps I'm the only politician to ever run and be in a position to be elected as governor of the state of New Mexico, and I think this is significant. I think this enables me to make changes that need to be made, changes that are outside of politics. The state of New Mexico, we're third in overall taxes as a percentage of income here in New Mexico when comparing us to other states. We're fourth in per capita state employees, which suggests to me that state government isn't getting run as efficiently as possible. We're fifth in overall crime when comparing us to other states, and we're 45th in overall education when comparing us to other states. So it seems to me that we can do better in this state, and what I suggest is we're going to hit all of these broadside. We're going to make a difference across the board. We're going to set goals in New Mexico to be the best. And as a result of setting goals to be the best, I want to suggest that we'll improve. And as a result of improving, that the quality of life will improve for all of us here in New Mexico. I get to make 500 appointments to boards, not to boards and committees. I get to make 500 appointments to all the people that run all the various state agencies. So I want to suggest that as governor, I'm going to get to run state bureaucracy, and in running state bureaucracy, I'm going to turn the state of New Mexico into one of being a partner with the citizens and businesses of New Mexico rather than one of being adversarial. And I think that this is first and foremost. I get to run state bureaucracy. I get to also make 2,800 appointments to boards and commissions. I think that doing this outside of the area of politics, doing this on people versus politics is going to make a huge difference in this state, and I look forward to the debate this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary Johnson. Now we'll turn to our panel of journalists who have questions for our three candidates, and we'll start off with Mark Oswald of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Mark, you have a question, I believe, for Governor King.
Yeah. Governor, this is something that Mr. Johnson sort of touched on there. You've been the state's chief executive for 3 terms and 3 different decades. The people of New Mexico know you. This year you failed to get a majority in the Democratic primary, and the polls show you trailing or neck and neck with Mr. Johnson in the general election race so far. After all these years in office, is the public tiring of your style of leadership, and why hasn't your candidacy generated more excitement this year?
Well, Mark, I think we've generated a great deal of excitement. And the truth of the matter is the primary was a very, very difficult primary. And I guess one of the reasons I didn't do better in primary is because I did put too much professionalism and pointed such quality and candidates without political overview, and it got me into some trouble in the primary. But it's like all campaigns. See, there goes Gary again with all those figures that were in 1991 when Mr. Crothers was governor. The truth of the matter is now all of those figures that he gives are not true. I've got the actual statistics right here that I'll be happy to make available, that we are the national average in overall income, personal income, whenever you look at the total amount, and that's a county, city, and state. So that's not right. And then here I'll just show you in one of the leading publications, job growth ranks 3rd in the nation. Again, now for 5 straight quarters, we've been 3rd in the country. We had double the national average in the income that goes into the general fund. So I guess maybe I've worked so hard trying to make government go to where people would see the bottom line that I didn't do as much PR as I should. So that's what I've been doing the last couple of months, and I think we've shown vast improvements, so I'm very pleased where we are in the campaign. And you know, all elections are different. It's different in the primary, it's different in the general, and I'm just glad to get to the general and have the opportunity to debate these issues and show what experience really does if you get the proper people in the proper positions, which I submit to you I certainly have done. And as we go through the evening, I want to point out all the progress we've made and all of the creations we've done as far as it pertains to parents and children.
Thank you, Governor King. I believe Mark Oswald has a question now for Roberto Mondragon. Mark?
Yes. Many New Mexicans of all stripes make all or parts of their living off of public lands by grazing livestock or cutting wood, and many of them enjoy hunting on federal or state land. At least some members of the Green Party have in the past called for restricting those activities or making them more expensive with higher fees. What's your message to New Mexicans who want to continue to use public lands as they have in the past?
The Green Party, Mark, I believe, provides the opportunity to bring the two extremes that exist in New Mexico together. What we have sometimes is people who have lived a way of life in the past who, in my opinion, are the original conservationists who believe that it is important to protect the water and the land and have clean, clear water, not just for a period of time now in order to make a profit, but for generations into the future. Then you have people who would like to see this land protected, both for recreational use as well as for other purposes, for people to enjoy, and also so that life as we know it will be sustainable into the future. And a number of occasions already we have been able to bring together people to think about these extremes and to realize that we're all thinking in the same direction. We're all thinking about the need for ranchers to be able to continue that way of life for their children and their children's children. And there's only one way of doing it, and that's through conservation measures. At the same time, there are people who can earn a living, for example, by cutting wood, cutting logs, and so forth. But it has to be done in a well-planned and wise manner. So again, we have been able to bring people together, the people who are the forest guardians with representatives of the community, and they have been able to look at a plan where, in fact, you can go ahead and work together and not be destructive, and at the same time be able to provide a way of life for people in parts of New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. Mondragon. Mark, a question for our third candidate, Gary Johnson.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson, I've understood you to say, I guess in your TV commercials and possibly elsewhere, that as governor you would stand up for states' rights against the federal government. Considering that New Mexico has 2 huge federal labs, several military installations, and some regional federal headquarters, any of which the federal government could take away and which help make us one of the top states for federal dollars per capita, isn't it a bit risky for a governor to be portraying the federal government as the enemy?
Well, and what I'm referring to here is private land rights. Really, there is a concerted effort by the BLM to put farming and ranching out of business in the state of New Mexico. Right now, with the grazing fee hikes, and not only that, with the BLM regulations that are pending right now, it's going to make it virtually impossible for farmers and ranchers to take out loans against improvements on their property. So that, like I say, there's a concerted effort by the federal government to put farming and ranching out of business. So I want to stand up for that. I want to be a states' rights advocate. Also, I will let you know that the federal government is mandating to the states programs that, quite honestly, the states just aren't going to be able to afford. And we need to stand up against those federal mandates and say no, these unfunded federal mandates. And I would also add that the state, for that matter, is putting unfunded federal the states are putting unfunded mandates toward the municipalities. So it's time we stood up against what the federal government is dictating that those of us in this state should do. And that's what I'm saying by us standing up for states' rights. It's something that's very important, and of all the states, our surrounding states have signed opposition to the federal government. I'm talking about Texas, Arizona, Utah, California. We're the only state that hasn't signed an opposition to the federal government and stood up for our states' rights. So I would take an active role in that.
And you're not worried about what the consequences might be to that kind of position as far as all the federal jobs in the state?
I think that's what plagues this country right now, is that we somehow have this gun held over our head, and that as a result of that, that's why we're going bankrupt on a national level, and on a state level. I would suggest that that's why our costs are just getting out of control, because we have changes in the funding formula from the federal government, and as that goes forward, again, we're just got a gun over our head, and we have to stand up for states' rights.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We'll now move on to our second panelist, Kate Nelson of the Albuquerque Tribune, who has a question for our candidates.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. This is a question that I'd like all of you to answer, starting with Roberto Mondragon. We'd like to hear your thoughts about signing a gaming compact with Indian tribes. The tribes with gaming operations have made it pretty clear that they don't want to give up regulatory control or a cut of the take beyond the state's actual costs. Please tell the public tonight whether you would agree to casino-style gambling, off-track betting, and other high-level gambling on the reservations, and what kind of regulations or revenue sharing would you demand in return?
Yes, I have taken a stand that I will, in fact, work with the various tribes and come together so that we can have a compact. I believe that the state of New Mexico should have done this quite some time back, just as was suggested by the Attorney General, Tom Udall. I feel that by doing so, that you can come to an agreement so that some of that funding will come to the state. A lot of problems do come about and have come about that are associated with gaming. Some of those have to do with transportation, in other words, with the highways, with the exits and access to the casinos. Some of them have to do with an increase in crime in the area, has been reported, perhaps not so much in this state, but in other states. And at the same time, you might have a problem that has to do with the need for additional programs in the area of rehabilitation for alcoholism, prevention in the area of alcoholism. And yes, you know, some people do get addicted to gaming, and so Gamblers Anonymous and those kinds of programs also should be taken care of. And so the kind of funding that would come into the state as the state's part, I think should be utilized for the purpose of taking care of some of the problems that would be caused by gaming. I really feel that whether the state of New Mexico does anything or not, that Indians are going to have gaming that are controlled and directed in conjunction with the federal government. I don't believe that in this case we should let that happen alone, and that we should work with them jointly with the Indian tribes and make sure that the funding that comes into the state goes to help to take care of some of the problems that gaming might cause.
And how far would you let the tribes go in the sort of gambling operations that they could embrace?
I think that they probably are at the present time doing as much as would be allowed. You go into some of these gaming operations, and yes, they have bingo. Also, you go to most of them, I mean to practically all of them, and also they have the video gaming. And in addition to that, they also have the card playing, poker games, and things of that nature. So that, which they have now, I believe should be allowed, just as has been established at the present time by the U.S. Attorney General.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Kate, the same question for another candidate, or
Mr.
same
Johnson.
questions actually. You can take the same time that Mr. Mondragon did answering both those questions.
Mr. Johnson, what will be the points of the compact that you will demand?
Well, I've said I would sign a compact with the Indians, with the tribes, and with the Pueblos in New Mexico. Of all the candidates in the primary, there was only one, and that was Bruce, that said that he wouldn't sign a compact. So everybody else has said that they would sign a compact. I would view this as a potential win-win situation for the state. The 1988 Indian Gaming Act passed the U.S. Congress, and that enabled the Indians, the Pueblos and the tribes in this state to have gambling. And that by signing a compact with the Indians, again, I would view this as a win for the state. Right now, we don't have any take, if you will, in Indian gaming. And as a result of signing the compact, again, the state of New Mexico could have revenue from that. So again, I would view this as a win-win situation. If we don't sign a compact with the Indians, I believe, and there have been suits filed already, that I believe the federal government, that the Supreme Court will hand down a decision that says, hey, New Mexico Indians, go ahead and conduct gambling any way that you want, and if that happens, why, the state of New Mexico will be in a lose situation. As far as how I would structure the compact, there have been 19 states that have signed compacts, so I would look to how those compacts were structured, and I wouldn't ask any more, I wouldn't ask any less from the state of New Mexico regarding the Indians than these other states have enjoyed. So again, I just look at this from a common sense standpoint and look at it from the standpoint of helping out the Indians, of recognizing Indian sovereignty and seeing the Indians be able to get ahead, which is something that's very exciting to me, the prospect that the Indians would be able to realize economic growth and determine their own destiny.
If I may follow up just very quickly with you, the only compact that has been offered thus far did not offer regulatory control or a cut of the take. What makes you think that you can negotiate those points?
Well, again, I certainly wouldn't make the compact any different than the 19 states that have signed the compact. So not having looked into that, again, I'm going to assume that there is a payout, if you will, for the state. And again, no more, no less than what the other 19 states have negotiated with their Indians.
Thank you. Governor King, what are the points in a gambling compact that you would demand?
Well, there Gary goes. That's one of the federal mandates that Bruce King was trying to stand up to. We got into trouble, you see, Gary. They sent down the mandate and they said that you would negotiate in good faith. And first I'd like to say that I'm not aware of any compacts that our neighboring states have signed that benefits them that I haven't signed. I work very closely with Texas, Arizona, Utah, Colorado. We're all good friends, and we generally do things pretty much together. So I don't think there are any of those. And I did not say that I wouldn't sign one of the compacts. I said that I would do what was within the legal confines, the Constitution, the laws of the state of New Mexico, and I would sign up to that degree. And the identities always wanted to go over that degree. They wanted to have additional privileges that were not allowed in New Mexico. So I met and we discussed what we could do, and I proposed to the Indian identities that I would try to work out something with them if we'd stay within the bounds where it was within the Constitution, and I felt that we should get some of the funds like in Connecticut. In Connecticut they get 25% of the net earnings, and I suggested we take 20% of the net earnings, put 10% of it into a capital outlay program to let all Indian identities draw from to have seed money for economic development. And they refused to do that. And then I also said, well, we'll go to the degree that we're allowed, and they said no, and I even mentioned the video machines and bingo and pull tab, and they said, oh no, we want a full Las Vegas casino. And so obviously I don't think you have to negotiate that. Now, it may be like you say, the federal government may hold a gun to her head, and we will obviously be looking and negotiating. If we pass the constitutional amendment, of which I'm against, number 8, well then obviously we'll have more leeway. So it's not in. He says wind up, so I better quit, I guess.
Well, Kate may have a follow-up question for you.
I do have a follow-up for
Governor?
you. Why not, just out of respect to what these people are trying to do on their lands, why not just sit at the negotiating table and keep hammering away at this?
Well, Kate, I'm glad to do that, but I'm the best friend the Native American Indian people have. I've always proved that through and through. And I've been working closely with the Navajo Nation. In fact, Alice was out there today at Crown Point, and we appropriated money, the first in the country, for a college at the Crown Point area. So it goes on and on. I'm willing to sit down. I'm willing to negotiate, but I was trying to do that, and they sued me. So Wendell Chino and another one that time's running out.
Thank you, Governor.
You bet.
Well, we have to move on to Glenn May of the UNM Lobo, and I think Glenn has a question for Gary Johnson. Glenn?
Mr. Johnson, you're relatively new to public service. Earlier in your primary campaign, your strategy seemed to center on just making your name and face recognizable to New Mexicans. Recently, you've had some criticism about changing stances on issues regarding Indian gambling, for one, and taxes also. Who is Gary Johnson? What does he stand for, and why are you running for governor?
Well, first and foremost, this has been a process that I haven't been involved in before. So it's really been a process of sound bites, and I'm not complaining. But I want to let you know that I've made a few misstatements. But I believe that I've held to everything that I've said throughout this. And what I'm saying is that government is too big. It taxes too much. We have an inefficient state government. We're the third highest tax state in the United States as a percentage of income, and you couple that with the fact that we're 48th in per capita income. So I want to suggest that we can do better in this state. We're 4th in per capita state employees. So I've made a couple of promises in this campaign. I've said no new taxes, no raising of existing taxes, and let's hold the growth on state government. Let's no more new state government employees. Now, I can make good on that promise because I have veto power over the legislature, and that's my intention. And I think that's a reasonable goal, and yet no other governor in this state has ever even come close to accomplishing that. That being just putting the brakes on state government growth and running a more efficient state government. And I want to suggest that you and I, as citizens of the state, will benefit from a more efficient state government. And again, that's all I'm stating, just to bring a common sense business attitude. Now, I have every intention of working with the legislature to make important things happen in this state, but given the fact that I get to run state bureaucracy, I get to appoint, I get to hire all those that run the various agencies, and given the appointive power over all the boards and commissions, that in fact the governor really will have a say in how state government gets run. And I want to say that that say is going to be one of cooperation with the citizens of New Mexico to see all of us get ahead, rather than the one that I see now, which is adversarial. And again, I look forward to the next 4 years and really believe that I can make a difference in making this happen.
Thank you. Glenn, are you going to follow up with a question or go to the governor?
I would like to follow up. Yeah, this has been bandied about somewhat, about New Mexico being the third highest tax state in the nation, and it's my understanding that this statistic actually comes from taking the total amount of tax revenue collected by the state divided by the number of people, whereas in reality a big portion of that money comes from mining revenues, the natural gas and oil revenues, that kind of thing. If you subtract those kind of dollars out of that fund, doesn't New Mexico fall more in the middle of the way states are taxed?
And you bring out an excellent point, and that's the truth. We're the third highest tax state as a percentage of income, which to me just points out the problem as it exists. If there is a hiccup in oil and gas revenue, and there certainly can be, and I believe that there will be, what that points toward is that we're going to have higher taxes as individuals. So again, you've pointed out the problem quite clearly, and we are the third highest tax state in the United States. We need to be committed to reducing taxes in New Mexico to grow the private sector. That's what we need to be committed to doing.
Thank you, Gary Johnson. Glenn, I believe you have a question for Governor King.
Governor King, regarding Patricia Madrid's comments about Gary Johnson surrounding himself with a bunch of Anglos if he's elected, what would your response have been if she or any other party's candidate had warned voters that an opponent was going to surround himself with a bunch of Hispanics or with a bunch of African Americans if they were elected?
Well, first let me touch a little bit of my time on the tax situation that I've been unable to get through. I have the statistics on personal income. A percentage of personal income were 11%, which is the national average. And I'll read you. In comparing Albuquerque to 6 other metropolitan areas in the west and southwest in terms of taxes on business, both property and corporate income tax, Albuquerque ranks lowest or next to lowest depending on the industry. And the states are Austin, Tucson, Sacramento, Colorado Springs, Salt Lake City, and Tulsa. And those are the ones that are similar size of Albuquerque. And it's that way throughout. And I have the statistics, and you know, I don't guess we're going to finish the campaign still way apart, I presume. But answering your question, it's not going to take me long to answer that one, because really Patricia and I are individuals, and we each seek office. And I am the one that is running against Mr. Johnson for governor. So we need to look at all these appointments and things that he's mentioning. There really are not 2,800 appointments. I guess some days it feels like it, but I think about 1,200 would be near right. But anyway, I know that she said that she apologized for that statement, and the point is that her and I both want to work with every single citizen in New Mexico. And that's the way the King Madrid ticket is going, and we're very, very happy to have the wonderful working relationship that we have with all of the 1,650,000 people. And we will be working hard to point out that we want every person in. As I say, I love everybody. I'm not mad at anyone. We want everyone to come under the umbrella and everyone feel that they are being treated fairly under a King Madrid team. And I am the senior member with experience and the background and the record in that area.
Glenn, do you have a follow-up question for the governor, or do you want to move on to Roberto Mondragon?
Well, I just wanted to follow down my point. I guess to use an example, if Gary had said that Roberto was going to surround himself with a bunch of Hispanics in his administration, I just would ask you what your response to that would have been.
Well, I guess I'd rather narrow down the debates between the governors and the lieutenant governors, and so I guess that they should take that up with Walter Bradley and with Steve Smith, rather than taking up with me, and I'll take up with Roberto and with Gary any of the areas about statements that we've made.
So we will move on then, Glenn, to Roberto Mondragon.
Mr. Mondragon, you seem to have really taken to heart issues concerning the quality of life for New Mexicans of lower incomes. If your candidacy means getting Gary Johnson elected in the end, what will be the fate of these social reforms that you hold dear?
I believe that what we have to do is look towards the future in what we like to refer to as future focus. One of the most important things to do is, in my opinion, to represent all of the people and to not ignore those people who have historically been unrepresented and underrepresented. The Indian community is a perfect example to where at the present time you have them doing something that a lot of the population of the state do not agree with, and this is gaming. The Indian population of the state of New Mexico has seen this as a tremendous opportunity and a great income. And being that they have been ignored in the past, you can't really blame them for taking this on. As we look around the state, then we find that there are people who are having a lot of problems with things surrounding their own community. I'm going down to Sunland, for example, and you have a group of people there where there is a dump that is immediately adjacent to the school. And the kids are in effect paid to pick up as many pieces of toilet paper that they can, and at the same time you have a little area there with all of the dump all the way around it, and you have the water tank right in the middle of it. All of these things, there is a need for representing. And I believe that with the establishment of a Green Party, the establishment of perhaps other parties in the future, that you will find that people will be able to identify with that party which is closest to them in philosophy and vote in that direction. And by doing so, then the people themselves of the state of New Mexico will be best suited to make decisions about helping to take care of the problems and bring about solutions to them in the future.
Thank you, Roberto. Glenn, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just so, would it be fair to say that if necessary to sacrifice your reforms for the short term, for the long-term benefit of, providing an alternative to New Mexicans, then so be it? Is that a fair statement?
That is not a fair statement in that you are saying that I will lose this race. One of the problems we've had recently is that we have polls that are showing us at 8 or 10%. But our polls, in fact, if you take the undecided vote, show us at about 20% right now. And certainly if we can double up in the next couple of weeks, we'll be at 40%. and that'll be enough to win. We're looking at winning this race. Thank you.
Okay, we go to Mark Oswald. Mark?
Okay, I've got a question for everyone. I guess we'll just start with Mr. Johnson here. Everyone who runs for office in New Mexico says they want better schools, safer schools, more local control for schools, well-paid teachers, and more parental involvement in education. Considering the fact that our state education department operates in large measure independently from the governor, can you tell us one concrete, definite thing that you would do as governor to make the public schools in New Mexico better?
Well, the concrete power that the governor has is that the governor gets to appoint 5 members out of the 15 members of the state school board. So that's a concrete measure in which the governor really has the power to affect the state school. In talking about the Johnson outlook for schools, I'm saying that we need to make kids first, that is the one thing that we need to concentrate on. Kids first, bureaucrats second. We need to empower families, we need to empower teachers, and we need to empower kids at the local level, at the school level, to see education improve here in the state of New Mexico. So to do that, I would look for an expansion of the charter school concept here in New Mexico, which does just that. It empowers kids, it empowers families, it empowers teachers at the local level to make decisions. So, and again, you come back to the power that the governor has. This is real power. This, I believe, can occur, that we get into this empowerment at the school level. Communities need to create a vision. We've got to have access for kids to technology, and we need to have school-to-work programs here in New Mexico, something that really isn't stressed. Right now, kids have 2 choices when it comes to school. They can either go to college or they don't go to college, and I'm talking about K through 12. So we need to create a real alternative for kids in the vocational area, and let them understand that by taking a vocational alternative, that they can in fact get high-paying jobs right out of school. And it's something that right now isn't happening, and because of the high dropout rate that we have in New Mexico, again, this is an area that we would concentrate on. And also after-school enrichment programs that really have left the schools. I'm talking about art, music, physical education.
I'm a little vague on this term empowerment. What do you mean empower kids in the schools?
Well, when you talk about empowerment, you're talking about very simply allowing communities, allowing families. I, as a parent, know better what my daughter needs going to La Cueva than somebody on the State Board of Education up in Santa Fe. That's my opinion. And so I want to have input with my daughter's teachers, and I want to have input with my daughter also, to bring about the highest quality education that I possibly can, combining what I know with the teachers and with my daughter. So that's empowerment.
Governor, can you give us one concrete, definite thing you would do over the next 4 years to make the schools better?
Yeah, I sure can. We would work, many of the things that Gary is mentioning, we already have in place, and certainly on a basis to where we can see how they work, like charter schools. We'll continue to work in that and expand it. We have one at Highlands here in Albuquerque, and we have one at Turquoise Trail School in Santa Fe that I'm familiar with, and I think they are doing a good job, so we will continue to work with them. But I'm a very, very strong believer in local autonomy. So the local school boards are the ones that should be in place to manage the needs on a day-to-day basis. And we can have good schools, and we have good schools, but we certainly need to make them better. We do have to pay our teachers and other personnel a wage that is commensurate with other types of work, and we haven't been doing that. But we did, the legislature and myself, we set a floor of $22,000 for a starting school teacher, which helped a great deal. We also put a 6% increase, double the national average, 2 years in a row, and with the first 6%, it brought us from 47th to about 41st. Another 6%, we should get along about 37th. And my commitment is to bring us to the Rocky Mountain mid-level range within the middle of the term. When I left office in 1982, we were 27th, about mid-average. So I don't know what went wrong in those years, but I'm working hard to bring it down. Another area that Alice and I have worked very hard in as children, youth, and family. We really want to work hard for prepare to learn as they go into school and really work in Head Start programs. I think that's one of the ways you can do more to prevent some of the things that cause problems further on in life, like additional welfare rolls and certainly those that wind up in our correctional system. So there's a lot of things we need to be doing, a lot of things we will have to work hard at, and I'm certainly committed to continuing with that and working with the State Department of Education and to seeing that we do have a good quality of life, good schools at all levels, all the way from birth up to the kindergarten on through the public schools and the vocational schools and the institutions of higher learning. It's very important that our people who are raised and educated in New Mexico have an opportunity to
Thank you, Governor. Don't sit
living.
down. Mark may have a follow-up
One
for you.
follow-up. What would you say, and I think Mr. Johnson's made this point in some of his statements in the past, that you've had your shot on this issue and people aren't very happy with the schools?
Well, I would say that that also is one of the areas that we have done much better than the national average. We've been cutting down on the dropouts, we've improved the test scores, and obviously we need to do additional work. But you can't blame someone that's been in and out since '71 and about half of the time for all of the ills that happened in our school system because of the structure that you pointed out when you started. And also with the local school boards, that they should all figure out how to improve it. Okay?
Thank you, Governor. We just have to move on and give Roberto Mondragon a shot at talking
Let's
about
try
the
the third
schools,
time
too.
the charm. See if that's the charm. Can we get one definite thing you do to make the schools better?
Mark, that really is a very difficult question to answer and say one. I'll try to do that, but at the same time, I really have to say that, that there's three things that are very, very important. One of them, of course, quality education. And then follows that you really cannot have quality education without having quality funding. Moving up from 47th to 37th, in my opinion, is just not enough. When we talk about quality education, I believe that one of the first things that we need to do is to have site-based management, meaning that we in fact have parents and teachers working together on putting together the budget on a school-by-school basis. Yes, that might be in place now, but not to the extent that it should be. In addition to that, then, quality funding means really addressing other issues, such as the economy in general for the state of New Mexico. We have something like $8 billion that is invested, but not in the state of New Mexico. We have to work really hard to get that kind of a fund that's made up of the permanent fund, the severance tax fund, the ERA fund, the PERA fund. Take some of that fund that belongs to the teachers and to the employees and to the people themselves and invest it in New Mexico. By doing that, then you increase the tax base. And by doing that, then you can increase the quality of education and the quality of the salaries of our teachers so we don't lose our best to other states.
Thanks.
A short follow-up, or shall we
No,
move on to Kate
let's move
Nelson?
on.
Kate,
But
you have a
let's-
question?
But let's stay with the schools issues.
All right.
The Tribune did a statewide poll recently asking residents what would be the one key thing that the government could do to improve their schools.
And candidates, I must tell you that we only have 30 seconds on this round for answers, so please,
We'll go
as short
fast.
as possible.
We'll go fast. We asked them if more money would do it. We asked them if more local control would do it. They said no. Stronger discipline would do it. What does that word mean to each of you, and what would you as governor do to improve discipline in the classroom, starting with Roberto Mondragon?
Yes, we absolutely need to have discipline in the schools, and a lot of the principals and the teachers are going in that direction. But I also believe that we cannot run a school and push kids out of school. We need to really concentrate on the dropout rate, and I have to say that you have to have the kind of program that provides, yes, discipline, but that kind of thing only comes if we have that in the family. We need to involve the family so that we in fact have an extended family into the school as well.
We are short of time. Thank you. I think we have to move on and give Gary Johnson an opportunity to answer that question.
Well, my father was a school teacher. He had the program that when kids got kicked out of school here in Albuquerque, they went to him before they went to Springer. And my sister's a school teacher here in Albuquerque, and that New Mexico voters have hit it on the head. Discipline is what teachers want and what the people of this state want. And very simply, that's just empowering teachers that when they want a child out of class that's disrupting the class, that student be removed from the classroom. And that's not happening right now, and very simply, that's got to happen.
And Governor King, 30 seconds.
Well, obviously, we have to do a much better job in discipline, and that's the reason we need the Children, Youth, and Family Program, and we need to prepare the children, and you need perennial involvement. And all of the things that we've been saying, of course, are very important, but we passed the legislation would give the teachers additional opportunity and additional tools to work with. And one thing that some of those that might be disruptive in a class, once they're not allowed to stay in that class, you should have an overall place for them to go to where they don't just drop out in the street. So we worked hard. We have some of that, and we'll get more.
Governor, thank you. We now have to move to our closing remarks. And Governor King, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement, sir.
Okay, well, first I'd like to say this has been a very enjoyable evening, and I want to thank all three of the press members. They've done an outstanding job, and I look forward to the next 4 years. And I feel very strongly that we need to strengthen the educational system. We need to have additional Head Start programs. We should put about 3 times as much money into Head Start as we've been putting, and we should give the local identities additional opportunities. So we'll try to work in those areas. And we really need to meet the funding, and we've already done that under the King administration. We've increased that at double the national average. We do have money that is now available, and we really need to use it to do the things we were talking about to reach the mid-level of the Rocky Mountain area. And I don't mean go into the permanent funds, the money that we have as a saving. We already use the earnings from that particular funds, but we do have a lot of things we need to do, and we need to work with our veterans in New Mexico. I'm a veteran of World War II, and the veterans work hard, and a lot of times they need assistance, and we need to work with them. But I do want to say before my time runs out that we really do need to have all of those good cabinet people in place to where they have the experience, and sure there'll be some changes and shifts around, but basically we have a good team in Santa Fe. We've had very good government. They've shown very good progress, and it really would not be in the best interest of citizens of New Mexico to move that around. Also, I want to thank all the people that have already voted for Bruce King and Patrick Madrid, and I want to thank all of those that are working so hard with Alice and I and Mike and Patsy, and it's very nice of them to do that. And I want the people to know that I love New Mexico, and I appreciate and welcome everyone to vote the King-Madrid ticket November the 8th, or even quicker if they go vote. So thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Closing statement now by Roberto Mondragon.
I'd like to touch on some of the issues that are important to me. One of the most important is economic development, and that has to do with the small businesses of the state, not bringing in the kinds of businesses that will take the money outside. We need to concentrate on assuring that businesses are in fact domiciled in the state before we start to help them out with the kind of incentives and tax breaks that we have been in the past. A lot of people from small businesses could help us to go into areas that do not have a good employment rate and help to establish jobs in the rural areas. Let us work as a family, from the big city to the small city, from the big county to the small counties. State government is very important, but it couldn't be done without state employees. The state employees of the state of New Mexico need respect. They need also to be paid well. They also need to have good retirement when they finish working so hard at the job that they do, where they have to deal either with paper or with people all day long. I think it's important to support collective bargaining for state employees and support collective bargaining in general. Unions in the state help that state to upgrade its economic development as well. I have to tell you that in 1994, you have 3 people running, and one of those is Roberto Mondragon. I have to also say at this time, I don't have to, but I want to, that I want your vote for Roberto Mondragon. I ask you for your vote for Roberto Mondragon and Stephen Schmidt to move New Mexico forward.
Thank you, Roberto Mondragon. And a closing statement now by Mr. Gary Johnson.
Well, the more and more I get involved in this process, the more excited, the more optimistic I become that we really can make a difference here in New Mexico. I find out about opportunities that are made available to this state on a daily basis that right now really aren't being taken advantage of simply because of just lack of effort, just a lack of wanting to get the state ahead. So again, I'm really optimistic that a change can be made. We need to have a vision for New Mexico, that New Mexico can be the best. And I think we've seen that there's a vision in place right now that it's okay to be mediocre, and that's what we're striving to be. Well, we need to have a vision that we become the best, and as a result of that, again, I don't think there's any doubt that we're going to improve across the board. I've been fortunate. I've spent a lifetime setting goals and just taking the steps necessary to meet those goals. I've surrounded myself with can-do people, and I've empowered those people to do the work that only they can do. And again, that equates, in my opinion, to state government and what I would do with state government. I think that it's significant that I'm outside of the political system. I think this is what is needed at this time to really bring about meaningful change here in New Mexico. My candidacy hasn't been about parties. It hasn't been about Republicans, Democrats, Greens, or Independents. And it hasn't been about ethnicity. It hasn't been about Anglos, Hispanics, Blacks, Asians, Native Americans. It's been about you and I as citizens of New Mexico, and what is it going to take to make life better here in this state. I believe in citizen service. I believe that people should get involved in this process, make a contribution, and then return to the private sector. I think that that's what this country was founded on, and that's what's certainly needed in New Mexico. With your help and your vote, we can make a difference, and I think we should be very, very optimistic about the future. We can make a difference. And again, I appeal to you for your vote on November 8th. We'll make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all three candidates, Governor Bruce King, Mr. Roberto Mondragon, and Mr. Gary Johnson, for your perspectives, sharing those with us tonight. I'd like to thank also our panelists, Mark Oswald, Kate Nelson, Glenn May. Thank you for your very astute questions, and I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for being part of our forum. Next Friday, November 4th, KNME will present the three candidates for Commissioner of Public Lands. Remember to vote in the election on Tuesday, November 8th. For at week